Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 340 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, we got some very special guests on the show this evening. Please welcome back to the show, Dodo himself, Michael Domangue, for coming on the show. And then
Thank you so much.
Of course, Michael. And then welcome, please, for the very first time, you may know him, he's a YouTuber. We've got Cyril from Defunct Games. Let's give it up. Hey. How's it going, Cyril?
Thanks, David.
Of course, it's great to have you on.
Did you say 340?
340 episodes. Can you believe it?
Hey, just now having me on.
Yeah, I know, right?
I see where I am on the pecking order.
Yeah. We had to hit all of the top level executives at Nintendo before we could get to you. So, but no, if you're not familiar, Defunct Games is a wonderful YouTube channel that does lots of stuff, but among them is these kind of retro reviews. Whenever new games drop on Nintendo Switch Online, Defunct Games will go through old gaming magazines and talk about what the reviews were at the time of these games coming out, which has always been a really great resource for me when I'm trying to figure out what games I want to play from Nintendo Classics. And that's why we have you on today, Cyril, because we're going to be talking all about Nintendo Switch Online, the emulation that you can do through Nintendo Classics, some of the pros and cons between playing these retro games on Nintendo Classics versus doing traditional emulation. I think when the service came out originally, there were not a ton of reasons why you would want to actually play these games on your Switch versus playing them on your computer or through an emulation handheld. But I do think over the years, Nintendo has really sweetened the pot when it comes to NSO, and we're going to be talking about all those reasons and some of the pros and cons of that throughout the main topic.
There are a lot of pros and cons.
Exactly. But in addition to that, we also have tons of news on the docket. It was a very big news week this week. Lots of direct rumors are firing up. There have been some game updates, some of which David from the future talked about last week, but we'll be going more into detail on those here. Turns out Bobby Kotick is in the Epstein files and much, much more. But before we get into that, how are we doing? Dodo, how are you doing? How have you been since we last had you on?
Yeah, it's been a while, but I'm happy to be back. I have no idea what number appearance this is, but it's always an absolute pleasure. No, things are going well. I am talking to you from a wonderful hotel room in southern New Hampshire. I do tech support for movie theaters these days, so I'm helping out movie theaters or up in the Northeast. Cool. Just had a huge snowstorm up here, but we dug ourselves out, so things are going well.
Hell yeah, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad those DCPs are still flowing.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you helped me make a DCP. I appreciate that. And then I found out later you can just export them out of Premiere. Sorry, that's some film editing talk. Save that for another podcast. How about you, Cyril? Have you been having a pretty good week?
Yeah, I suppose so. I was at the beach for the last 3 weeks. I always take January and go down to Cannon Beach, Oregon. And so I was there. I got back on Thursday. So since then, I'd say that my life has been worse because I'm not at a beach.
That's true. Yeah.
But I am talking to you, so there's some points.
Yeah, very good. And as I understand, you were working on a book down there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am. Yes, I am in the midst of working on a book, the complete cheat code compendium. Awesome. Talk about that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's called a tease.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll talk about that a lot more in the main topic. I've been doing okay. I've been chilling for the most part. I'm trying to think of what I really did this past week. I've been playing a lot of video games. I'm leaving town this week, which I'm looking forward to. So I've been prepping a little bit for my trip. I'll be going to Chicago in the dead of winter. So that'll be fun.
For all your stalkers out there.
Yeah, exactly. If anyone's trying to stalk me, I will be at this address in Chicago on these dates. Actually, I'm not inviting stalkers, but it might be nice to have a stalker every once in a while. Anyway, we'll move on from that. I am not
that will be clipped for future episodes.
Put that on the reels.
Enough of that. But no, it's been great. And I think, speaking of reels, we have been getting quite a bit of traction on some of our reels that we've been posting recently on Instagram. So if anybody's listening to the show for the first time, welcome. Glad to have some new followers over on the YouTube and on our Instagram as well. So that's really great to see. Thank you guys for showing up. And let's give a little shout outs while we're in this area right now. Last week, we did an episode with Fabraz and Chris Wade from the Demon Turf, Demon Tides games and Big Hops. We talked about expressive 3D platformers. That was such a great talk with those developers. But we had some wonderful comments when it came to that on Discord. Swampy Southpaw said, "This podcast does a great job of keeping my Steam wish list fully stocked with all the great indies that regularly get highlighted. And as a nice bonus from this week, I apparently already had Demon Turf in my library from some past bundle, so I'm fired it up and I'm loving it." That's really great to hear. Also a huge fan of Demon Turf, obviously. Over on Instagram, in regards to talking about some of the recent retirements that have been happening at Nintendo, Mr. Fishy352 said, "I think Miyamoto will die at his job in that he will not retire. He's already been granted special exemptions from working this long because of Japanese labor laws." And that is true. I mean, he's kind of past the age of retirement in Japan, but he keeps chomping at the bit. I think he just loves what he does over there. I think he really loves like being the Walt Disney of Japan, which is essentially what he is right now.
He's going to have a Stanley Kubrick ending.
Yeah, he's going to uncover some dark cabal of the world's global elite and be assassinated. And finally, Molly Phoenix made a nice comment on one of our reels when we were talking about the talking flower that you can buy, the physical version of the talking flower that's going to be available whenever the Switch 2 edition of Mario Wonder comes out. And Molly asked, "Is this flower related to Birdo?" And I would have to say yes. I believe that they are cousins. They both have giant, big, gaping maws, and somehow in the past they are related. But that's going to do it, I think, for shout-outs this week. Thanks to everybody for all the comments on the YouTube and on social media. If you too would like to be shouted out, listener, we would love to do so. Leave us a comment down here on the YouTube version, the video version of this podcast. It's a great way to get in touch with us, or any of these places on social media, and we will be sure to shout you out next week. If you could as well, like and subscribe while you're over there on the YouTube. Leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. Share the show with a friend. Word of mouth goes really a long way, and all that stuff. That's the call to action for this episode. But I think with all that out of the way, I'm ready to get into the news. How are we feeling, fellas? We ready to start the show?
I'm ready to hear what the news is.
Hell yeah.
I'm woefully out of date.
Well, I cannot wait to inform you, because we're going to start right off with a bevy of direct rumors that have been happening over the past week. This is not abnormal for Nintendo to have a direct in February. In fact, I think most years Nintendo has a direct in February, but the speculation is really going out of control right now, and it is seeming like a partner showcase will be aired. This has been corroborated by Nate the Hate. We talked a little bit about that last week, but he's saying that I think the 5th of February is what it's looking like. That's a Thursday for a partner showcase. That might change given some Japanese dates. You know, sometimes the 5th means something different depending on what country you're in, obviously. But I would say this week is very likely for a direct. And Nintendo's been dropping a ton of news outside of this direct. And I think whenever there's a huge bevy of Nintendo news just dropped on like Nintendo Today or on Twitter or whatever, that generally means that a partner showcase is imminent. This has happened in the past. They kind of clip all the stuff out that would have made it a general direct, and they just leave the third parties. But are you guys excited for a partner showcase? Are you disappointed that we're not getting a general direct?
I'm excited. I feel that with any partner showcase, there's like 1 or 2 games that are exactly my level of freakiness that, you know, I'm super excited for. Typically, you know, when they drop any sort of Persona announcements, you know, I'm going to get crazy. Anything like a Dragon Wise, I'm going to get crazy about.
Sure.
I'm a Sega boy these days. But yeah, like I'm interested to see what's going to be that one announcement that I'm going to get really psyched about.
Yeah. No, I agree. There's been a lot of really interesting things teased for the Switch 2 when it comes to third parties. Final Fantasy just came out, and that's looking amazing. And everything I'm hearing about the performance of that game sounds great. But, you know, lots of stuff like Duskbloods, you know, Elden Ring. We haven't heard sight nor sound of those since they were first talked about. So what about you, Cyril? Are you excited for directs? Does direct season tickle your fancy?
I don't tune into them live or anything like that. Whenever they come out, I tend to catch up on them later. And most of the time, I'm just looking to see if they announced a Nintendo Classic or something like that. But obviously, yeah, I am curious about. I will admit the Switch is not always the first system I go to for, say, Call of Duty or what's one of the other ones that's rumored or maybe announced is that Indiana Jones game.
Right.
I reviewed that on PlayStation 5 last year, and it was a lot of fun. But I like seeing what's happening with the Direct.
Yeah.
Mostly the stuff that Nintendo puts out, though.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's when you're a multi-platform gamer, it's kind of hard to get super excited whenever a downgraded port comes to Nintendo console. But there is certainly an excitement I see just in seeing high-performing games actually playing on Nintendo consoles. It's just kind of, at the very least, something enticing. Like I didn't pick up Final Fantasy yet, but I do feel like I would play it a lot more on my Switch 2 than I ever did on my PS4. So
I've just started playing it. I can confirm the performance is great on it, docked and handheld.
Lovely.
It's great.
Lovely. You love to see it. I don't know. I started playing the demo and I'm like, man, how realistic am I going to play anything that's past the demo anyway? I'm not very good.
I have the first two on PlayStation, but I haven't played them yet.
Yeah. Well, we'll see about that. Maybe we'll see Rebirth shown off at this Direct. But speaking
What's the title going to be for the third one?
Oh, that's a good question.
See, they said they've already figured out what it's going to be.
Right.
They didn't say what it is.
Man, what if they come to this Direct with that? That would be huge, right? Because they said all three are coming to the Switch.
That feels like a Keeley level announcement.
Oh no, Jeff can't have them.
They're not going to wait that long, though.
I don't know. It's got to be something, and it's got to be 2 syllables, right? So redux. I don't know.
I wish I came to this bit with actual funny examples.
Come on, Cyril, you can't lay it up without knocking it down.
Dropped the ball on this one. Repurchase.
There we go. Final Fantasy repurchase. We'd love to hear it. We're going to move on to our next bit of news. This is also about Directs because there was a Tomodachi Life Living the Dream Direct on the 29th of January. This is pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. I'm looking forward to this game. They revealed a lot about this game, not least of which is that woke is back in a big way. They have officially announced that you can have same-sex relationships, which is great. You can also set your gender from male, female, or non-binary. You can be fully bisexual, pansexual, or completely asexual, whatever you want. Really, really nice to see. I know a lot of people were discussing how Nintendo was going to actually tackle that issue going forward. But from everything I've seen online, everybody's completely fine with this, which I am very happy to see for the most part. I'm sure there are some people that are complaining about it somewhere, but I'm very happy that there's a lot more representation happening in this game. There's tons revealed in this. There's a photo mode that they showed off where you can pose with your Miis. They talked about all the different ways that Miis could interact and meet with each other. Apparently, the islands are completely customizable, very much like Animal Crossing. I don't know. I'm a huge Mii fan. This isn't generally my style of game, if I'm honest, but I have to support my Miis whenever they come out, just because I want way more games to use the Miis. What about you, Michael? Are you excited for this? Did you watch this Direct?
I did not watch this Direct, but I have been reading the articles about it. My hype level is I'm going to say it's on the medium burner. It's not on the front, it's not on the back, but I think as the community sort of shows off more of what this game is and more of what's happening, I think I'm gonna get on the hype train for it.
Yeah.
I found out about the 3DS version very, very late in the day, so I'm excited now to see what's going to happen with this new one.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I know there was a little bit of controversy around this and something on the website that was kind of tucked away at the bottom, basically saying that online photo sharing will not be enabled for this game. And to me, that's a huge L in a lot of ways, just because this game screams social media, people posting what their Miis are doing and the funny antics they get into or whatever. So that's a shame. I know Game Explain did reach out to ask Nintendo and clarify exactly what some of that meant and what it sounds like. And I might be wrong on this, and we'll have to see whenever the game actually comes out. but it sounds like you can take screenshots and videos in this game, but you won't be able to share them to social media or to the cell phone app directly. So I think the thinking there is like they're worried people are gonna, make Hitler or some uncouth, characters or whatever, and they don't really want that easily shareable. Hopefully there will be a way that you can just kind of still take the SD card out and get your screenshots that way, or just people will be streaming this game regardless, but it's kind of a stopgap there. Kind of an interesting little aside there, and shows Nintendo's still a little puritanical when it comes to some of this stuff, but I suppose you can't blame them. I'm just happy to see Nintendo returning to some of their weird side. I think the release date for this is going to be April 16th, so only a couple weeks after the Mario movie. Tomodachi Life Living the Dream comes out.
The only thing that I recognized in that whole thing was Nintendo being puritanical.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just their MO.
I agree. Nintendo's going to Nintendo, but it is nice to see them officially bringing woke back. We're going to move on to some game updates that dropped last week. The first of which is Splatoon 3. Briefly mentioned this last week. This dropped while I was editing the podcast. And it seems that Splatoon 3 got an 11.0.0 update. And this is kind of a huge update. It added health bars to characters whenever you shoot them, which is crazy. Splatoon has been a thing for a decade now, and this is the first time there's ever been a game that had health bars in it. That kind of changes quite a bit. They added this kind of aura that comes around your body that gives you like a boost whenever you get a bunch of kills in a row. Kind of adds this kind of, I suppose, rage mode, you could call it. And a couple other updates like that. Lots of little tweaks, but these are kind of like fundamental changes to the game. And it makes me wonder what the hell is going on, because, we got a Switch 2 edition of Splatoon 2, or it wasn't really a Switch 2 edition, but like a free update that you could play. So you could play it on Switch 2. And then a few other updates as well. Plus, it got a PEGI rating as well recently for a Switch 2 edition. So I kind of think Splatoon 4 is quite a ways off. I think the team seems to be probably working on Splatoon Raiders right now and not making Splatoon 4 at the moment. And I think that's okay. Personally, I think if they keep updating this game and they add more content to it at this point, so there's still a multiplayer thing to go to with whatever single player game Splatoon Raiders is going to be, I'm all for it.
Can I ask a really stupid question?
Sure.
What is Splatoon Raiders?
So we don't really know. They dropped a trailer for it, like a teaser, I suppose you could say, back in maybe October or something like that. Maybe it was September, and they showed a little bit of it, and then they said it's a new Switch 2 game that's coming out, and then they haven't said anything else about it. So, we were talking here about this partner showcase direct. I think usually those are all third-party things, but I know the last time we had a partner direct, there was a pretty big chunk on Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, right? So I would imagine that there's going to be like one first-party Nintendo thing in this partner direct, and I really hope, if there is, it's more information on Splatoon Raiders, because I don't know, I'm a big fan of this world. Like, I love the Splatoon world, and I'd love to see spin-offs, treated with the same kind of intensity, I suppose.
Does Nintendo put out the Hyrule Warriors games, or is that Koei?
It's Koei Tecmo that develops it, but Nintendo publishes it. And it's obviously all Nintendo IP. So it is like technically a first-party game regardless. But either way, Splatoon 3. It's got a huge update. Definitely worth checking out. There's a lot going on there. And then in addition to that, Kirby Air Riders got an update as well. And the Kirby Air Riders game got a Grand Prix mode. So Sakurai said he was done with that game. He said it was content complete. And then it was like 2 weeks later, a whole brand new mode comes out. And props to Jordan. He said that he really wanted a Grand Prix mode, and we all basically agreed it was never going to happen. And then here it is. So clearly Masahiro Sakurai is a fan of this podcast, as we have often suspected. Are you interested in any of these? Have you been playing Kirby Air Riders or Splatoon?
No, I've not been playing either. There was another big update for a certain game involving islands that I've been playing around with recently. No.
I think I've heard of that game.
Yeah. Well, then I think with that out of the way, we will move on to our next bit of news. And that is about the YouTube app for Switch 2. So there's not a ton to say here, but for some reason, the Switch 1 YouTube app has not worked on Switch 2 this entire time, and YouTube has been dragging their feet. They keep saying that they're working on something, but we haven't gotten any updates. I believe on the YouTube Discord, which is something I just learned existed yesterday, and there was a post on Twitter as well, which was subsequently removed, basically saying that a YouTube Switch 2 app should be dropping this month. So that's pretty exciting. Maybe that's something we'll see in this direct as well. You know, if they were like, they maybe spoke a little too soon and Nintendo was like, bro, chill. We gotta save that for the direct. But I'm kind of actually excited for YouTube on Switch 2 because I think the Switch 2 has like that nice big screen. And I think it'll be nice to, put that on in bed while I'm falling asleep to some YouTube videos. But I don't know what y'all's sleeping habits are like.
I will say I once evacuated for a hurricane and we could not get reliable weather information at the hotel we were staying at. And it was my docked Switch with the YouTube app that actually helped us get information about the storm.
So the YouTube app on Switch 2 could save lives, is what you're saying.
I'm saying that it is a great fallback for those who are very limited in how they access information and need that access.
That's a great point. That's a great point. What about you, Cyril? Are you excited to watch your own videos on the YouTube app on Switch 2?
Sure. No, I'm surprised that this doesn't already exist.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't know that it didn't already exist. I tend to not use the Switch or Switch 2 as a portable.
Mm-hmm.
I know I am abnormal in that sense. I tend to do all my gaming on the television, or I have my PC and my TV are pretty close together, so I just spin. That didn't sound good. Anyway, they should add more ads. We need more ads in YouTube.
That's straight. Don't give them any ideas. I don't know. I just discovered recently, like YouTube TV, and then let's say you like pay for the extra like HBO edition so you can have, premium cable or whatever. All that is just available on the YouTube app. Like if you search for like, say, The Pit recently, I've been watching The Pit just on YouTube. Straight up. So it's stuff like that I think is pretty nice to have like a decent size 1080p tablet for. Sure. So I'm pretty excited for this to drop. But anyway, we'll move on there to our next bit of news. And this has been a confusing story, to say the least. But Dispatch, the critically acclaimed game that came out last year on multiple platforms, has finally come to Switch 1 and Switch 2. But to the chagrin of many video game fans, it seems that the optional censored mode that you could toggle is just on by default and cannot be turned off in the Switch and Switch 2 versions. This has led to a lot of people being very upset, mainly because that was not revealed until the game came out. So I think a lot of people had pre-ordered this thinking they'd be getting the full, original intended experience for this game, and then getting the censored version that can't be turned off. There's been a lot of back and forth between Ad Hoc Studios, the developers of this game, and Nintendo. They've both made statements about this that kind of contradict each other. Ad Hoc was basically saying, oh, well, we thought because Cyberpunk is on Switch and had nudity that it wouldn't be a problem, but turns out it was. And then Nintendo was like, this isn't us, fam. This was entirely Ad Hoc Studio. So I think, it seems Ad Hoc is not being entirely honest about exactly what happened here. From what I understand, basically Cyril is the problem here, the Japanese ratings board. They don't allow any nudity in games, full frontal or otherwise. And so I think the way that, Cyberpunk has gotten around that is there is a Japan eShop version of the game and a rest of the world eShop version of the game. And it seems like what probably happened here is that Ad Hoc did not want to make two SKUs for this game and instead just wanted to make the one version that could be on all the platforms. I mean, I get why they would want to do that, but certainly I think it was a little disingenuous to not tell people about that going forward. As I understand, it's, you could still very much enjoy this game in its censored form. It's obviously, you don't have to see hanging dong in order to enjoy a video game. But yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm only going to speak for myself there. But but Have you ever like not wanted to buy a game because it was a censored version? Like, is this something that I think is fair to complain about?
I mean, it really harkens back to like the days of Mortal Kombat on the Super Nintendo and Genesis, like even the pre-ESRB days. But I don't know if ever I'm going to download a piece of, say, adult content, not even like how we think of it, but something more on the adult realm. I don't think of the Nintendo platform as the route to go to get that content. If something's multi-platform and features hanging dongs, I'm probably going to get it on PC. Like, because I know if it's going to get released on PC, if it's censored, people are going to have the uncensored mod ready to go.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, like with Nintendo, I think obviously the publisher of this game should have been very upfront that this is the version that you are getting. And I've read their statement where they put it in one place, but it actually didn't show up in the right place, and that was their excuse.
Yeah.
But I think you need to be very, part of the pun, explicit about which version of the game you're going to release on this platform. But also, I just don't think I don't think of the Switch as probably the best platform for this game to begin with.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I mean the eShop is like littered with hentai games and all these weird, porny puzzle games and all this kind of stuff. So it's not like it's like we talk about Nintendo being puritanical, but it seems like in this instance that wasn't what was causing the problem here, right?
I mean, I was about to bring up that exact fact, because I've reviewed Switch games like Hentai vs. Evil or Waifu Uncovered. Waifu Uncovered does not leave a lot to the imagination.
Sure.
And Nintendo seems perfectly okay with it. And I'm happy about that, because in one way it feels like they've turned a new leaf. They're okay with more stuff, but then, one step forward, two step backwards.
Right. So we'll have to see what eventually comes of this. I know that Ad Hoc has said that they're talking to Nintendo about this and that they're working on a solution. It's been a really unfortunate PR speak, I think, from them right now. I really hope that they take some PR training classes or something in order to figure out how to better talk to their communities here, because I think they said we're going to try to get it as uncensored as possible, which is just to release the game as it is on other platforms. I think that's really all you need to do here, and own up to the reality of what happened. I think we'll go a really long way. No one will be mad. Just undo your mistake. And I think a lot of people will be buying this on this platform, because I think these Telltale style games are a great fit for both handheld, for Nintendo platforms in general. I personally always prefer to play the original intended version of a game, not because I'm a horn dog, just because I like the original creator's intent whenever I'm playing a game. So censorship is a no-no for me, but we'll go ahead and move on. Speaking of censorship and redactions, Bobby Kotick, you may know as the former CEO of Activision, and two leads at Rockstar, being Sam Houser and Leslie Benzies, have been found to be in the recently released Epstein files. You never want to talk about this kind of thing on a gaming podcast, but here we are. Bobby Kotick, I think, had been in conversation. Epstein used to have parties on Bobby Kotick's boat, on his yacht or whatever. So who knows what was going on there? You hate to see that. There were also some conversations with futurist Pablo Holman, where they were discussing Call of Duty's microtransactions being indoctrination for kids to be a part of the economy and whatnot, which I hated reading that stuff. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, there were also some witness testimonies that indicted some of the Rockstar leads as well. I'm not going to go too into this. Obviously, nobody has been actually indicted of anything. None of this has gone to trial. This is all just dumped on the White House website as they've been doing. And a lot of these documents are heavily redacted. But it just goes to show that way more people were in these Epstein files than I think anybody was thinking. And the games industry and the film industry and all these entertainment industries are not exempt. It's not just global leaders and billionaires. Pretty much anybody who seemed to have a lot of money seemed to have some elbow rubbing with Jeffrey Epstein.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but can we go back to talking about the hanging dong in Dispatch? I have way more opinions on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't have too much more to add on here. Do some research. I will say now is a great time to talk to your parents.
It's not on Google Image.
About the Epstein files. Yeah, not on Google Image, that's for sure. What do you have to say about this, Michael?
I just remember the last time I was on this podcast, you went on a rant about Zaslav, and I just had Mike Myers next to Kanye West face the entire time. And that's where I'm going to stay here now.
Yeah.
It's just continue to be the Mike Myers to your Kanye.
Hell yeah. Well, somebody...
sorry to compare you to Kanye.
No,
but,
it's okay. It's okay. It's not every day you get to talk about Jeffrey Epstein on your video game podcast, and God damn it, I'm going to take the opportunity. Okay.
You really brought me on for a dark episode.
I know. Look,
I'm surprised you don't have the Nick Rocks pleading guilty in here.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's just too much going on. There's too much going on in the world. But let's move on because we could talk about this forever. Ubisoft, as we talked about last week, this is a bit of an update on a news story we had last week. Obviously there were a ton of studios closed at Ubisoft recently, and unions at Ubisoft from around the world are calling for an international strike. A 4-day strike that should be happening later this week. Obviously, we are in solidarity with workers of the world, especially video game workers. And we've talked quite extensively about video game unions, general unions, and otherwise on this podcast. So definitely in support of that. I think that Ubisoft management has been rather sloppy lately and has been mired with its own controversy, obviously. So I think that this is much deserved. You hate to see strikes happen, but sometimes they're necessary. So we'll see how that goes. We'll be sure to cover more of this next week, but we'll see if anything comes of this. Ubisoft is
it's a
not
shame
in the best
because
position
they've
right
actually
now.
put out a couple of good Prince of Persia games recently. They had that Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, and then the Rogue Prince of Persia.
Mm-hmm.
Those were both real good.
They're both real good, but didn't sell very well. I think
one was in early development for a year, but
right.
I mean,
I know Lost Crown was the Rayman Origins devs and like the Rayman Legends devs. And I think a lot of those guys, I think that studio just got closed. It was like, it didn't sell up to their expectations. And so they just closed the studio. And that's like, that's one of the more famous studios that they have, one of the longest running studios at Ubisoft. So I think a lot of the management at the top has got to go. You hate to see the way that it's been handled recently. I think the entire games industry is facing a bit of a personality and identity crisis, but we'll move on from that right now because we are going a little long here in this news section. Talked a little bit too long about the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Walmart has apparently had a leaked image. This was kind of some promotional image that they had online. And this is moving us a little bit more into the main topic here that included Metroid Prime 2 Echoes and Pikmin 2 on their Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack advertisement that they were showing. That is interesting, obviously, because neither of those games have been revealed as being a part of this. We had that kind of big GameCube trailer whenever the Switch 2 was revealed, showing all the games that would be coming. These were not a part of those. And also, strangely, Pikmin 2 is on the eShop already. You can buy the game for, I believe, $30. And then, obviously, we also have Metroid Prime Remastered. And so getting Metroid Prime 2 on GameCube NSO feels a little weird. I think Nintendo has since come out and said that there are no plans to release either of these games on Nintendo Switch Online at this time, which they have often said, and then that ends up not being true because
they're going to say that either way.
At this time, pulls a lot of weight there.
Today.
Yeah, exactly. So, but Cyril, what do you think about this? Like, obviously, I think a lot of people love the quality of life stuff that was added in Metroid Prime. Do you think Prime 2 dropping on Nintendo Classics is a good idea?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the more GameCube games, the better. There are actually only so many great GameCube games that could come to the Nintendo Switch Online. And I think if you look at the best reviewed ones, a lot of them are just never going to come due to licensing or due to just publishers that have no interest in bringing games to the Nintendo Switch Online. But look, this is my beat. I do the review crew for the Nintendo Switch Online or Nintendo Classics, whatever you want to call it these days. And where we look at what critics said back when these games first came out. And so anytime any of these games get leaked, Metroid Prime 2 or Pikmin 2 or any of these games, I'm immediately doing the research and getting the scores and getting things planned. This time around, I looked at those and I didn't do that because I don't know. This feels more like wishful thinking from Walmart than an actual leak. I mean, you probably in an episode last year, you probably talked about the leaks with the blurry pictures and the background with Glover. And
yeah, we certainly have. A lot of those have ended up coming true.
And those have come out. Forsaken 64 and stuff like that. Yeah. And so those, I had no problem preparing and writing. Like you said, Nintendo hasn't even released all of the GameCube games that they had promised. They still have Super Mario Sunshine and 2 Pokemon games that maybe they'll release at once. I don't know. And so I don't know. I do think we'll get more GameCube games. Neither of these games, like you said, feel like, I don't know, Pikmin 2 maybe more so than the Metroid Prime 2. But I do feel like they're going to do Metroid Prime 2. It makes more sense doing like a remaster or remake of it like they did with the first one.
I agree. I think even if it's just something that the game is essentially upscaled to HD, but brings the control method, kind of the more modern control, because I think that's the thing that dates that game the most is the awkward GameCube controls that there's really no way around. You can't really button map your way out of that, the way that the game was designed, the aiming and everything like that. So I think my hope would be, I think them just releasing Metroid Prime 2 on NSO, but having a little tweak under the hood to kind of allow for more modern controls. I think that would be the best way to do it because, I don't think that Metroid Prime 4 sold as much as they wanted. I don't think Metroid Prime Remastered sold as much as they wanted. I think Nintendo is still committed to Metroid. There have been rumors about them developing a Metroid movie recently going around online. Those are just rumors at this time. Obviously, there's been no real substantive evidence on that. But I do think Nintendo is all in on Metroid, but, there's a limit to what they could do with their resources if these games just don't sell like they want. But
even if they do a TV show or a movie based on Metroid, that doesn't mean we get another Metroid game.
Sure. Yeah.
We had 5 seasons of Castlevania, and I'm not so sure we haven't had a new Castlevania game in 20 years.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. We'll go ahead and move on to our last bit of news here, and this is definitely NSO main topic related. And the Virtual Boy got an overview trailer, and there were a few things that were shown off here. Firstly, the launch lineup is a little bit bigger than everybody was thinking. I think the word on the street is that it would launch with 3 games, but it turns out the games at launch are going to be Tolero Boxer, Galactic Pinball, Red Alarm, Golf, Virtual Boy Wario Land, which is arguably the best game on the Virtual Boy, 3D Tetris.
Not arguable.
Yeah, okay, maybe it's not arguable. It just definitely is. And the Mansion of Innsmouth, which was previously unreleased in the US, but did have a localized version ready to go. So that's great that we saw that. But I think the real big news here is that 2 as of yet unreleased games will be coming later this year to the service. That being Zero Racers, which is essentially a new F-Zero game, and Dragon Hopper or D-Hopper, both of which were shown in the past, but only now are actually getting a release for the first time. So Nintendo is pulling a Star Fox 2 here and actually releasing brand new games that never saw the light of day.
You are talking to an OG Virtual Boy owner here. You're talking to a guy who had it growing up, who didn't understand the marketing of the system, so tried actually using it as a portable system in the back of a car, and almost died from just the car sickness that came from that. That all being said, I'm so excited for this. I'm excited to actually get the full $100 headset attachment for this and go whole hog into Virtual Boy again.
Well, have you bought it? Did you order it? Did you order the headset?
I haven't ordered it. I'm actually going to go. I'm a train ride away from the Nintendo store at NYC, so I'm going to go to the store and pick it up there.
It is sold out. It's sold out online right now.
I will call. see if I can talk to the folks there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm super excited about this because, like, yeah, it's something that, and we can get into this in the main topic, but it's like, it's something that's been attempted in emulation. But I do think that Nintendo coming to it with such almost the entire library. I know there's a few third-party titles that aren't going to be part of it. I think there was a Waterworld game, if I'm not mistaken, for the Virtual Boy. But I'm excited for these unreleased games to finally see the light of day. That's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I think it's huge. It's huge for games preservation. And it's like, again, this is one of the things that Nintendo Switch Online and these Nintendo Classics apps are kind of good for. You know, it's like Nintendo's got all this stuff in the vault. You know, I hope there's a lot of other games that were in development for the Virtual Boy that never saw the light of day, probably at different levels of being finished. I would love if they added more stuff to this. And it really sweetens the deal if you are shelling out the $100 to get this headset, which I imagine will mostly sit on people's shelves. But to me, I'm excited to have like a decent recreation of what the Virtual Boy was actually like. You know, getting original Virtual Boy now, not only is it expensive, it's also, you know, it's those things break really, really easily. And the games are hard to find, a lot of them, you know? So I think this might be the first Nintendo Classics app that's kind of a definitive, you know, full release of at least most of the games for a system, which is pretty exciting to me. Cyril, are you excited for this? I mean, this is obviously going to be great content for your channel at the very least.
Right. And I too. I don't know how you did this, but you scheduled two people that owned it when it first came out. Now, granted, I did not try to use it as a portable because I did know better.
Yeah.
But I will say that I waited until Walmart had it for $30 price to move and bought it right as they were getting rid of them. I knew that the system was dead when I bought it, but I gotta have it. This is going to show my age a little bit. I was actually at the Winter Consumer Electronics Show in 1995 when they unveiled it into the for the United States for the first time. And I actually have a little bit of a story because we had to wait in a really long line, like a couple hour line, to go into this geodesic dome that in previous years they had used for Star Fox. And, you know, it's this dark room that had a bunch of the systems set up, and we could try Telero boxing and the galactic pinball and a couple of the others. And then on the way out, they gave us a little press kit or something that we could read through. And now when you get out of the dark geodesic dome, it's real bright. I don't think anyone was looking at the press kit, except for one guy. And the only thing I remember was this guy looking through the press kit, and he says, "Wait, $200? Oh, fuck that." And that is the reaction I always had about the Virtual Boy, which is, it's crazy that they wanted $200 for this thing.
It was definitely one of Nintendo's more misguided, or maybe the most misguided move they've ever made. You know, it's just like, just the fact that it's like a headset that you don't put on your head, but you have to bend over a table and, you know, have back pain
and that's and it gives you headaches. Of the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it was, you know, kids weren't supposed to use it because of developing eyes. Who's the target of this?
Yeah.
Is that why I wear glasses now? Because I played the Virtual Boy.
Maybe.
There we go. There we go.
Might be.
Like, even their advertising just felt like they half-assed it. And they knew they were throwing this thing out to die. And, you know, they knew that they had either, you know, at that point when it was coming out, they thought they had the Nintendo 64 coming out the same year. So they're thinking, oh, you know, no matter what the Virtual Boy does, you know, the Nintendo 64 is going to be there and that'll help. And it was really just only because of Gunpei.
Yeah. Rest in peace.
It came out. Right.
I don't know. I still admire the Virtual Boy for being ahead of its time. Even though
I love it.
It lagged behind in a lot of ways, and I think a lot of the games actually were pretty good. Like I've emulated a lot of these games like on 3DS, like to get that kind of faux 3D. But I'm really looking forward to playing these games with my head in the thing as was originally intended, full hanging dong on display. No, I'm just kidding. But
specifically for D-Hopper.
Yeah, for D-Hopper. Yeah. That's what it stands for.
The big thing that surprised me, I wasn't surprised that there were 6 or 7 games announced for day one. That's on par. The only system that only had 3 was really the GameCube. And as I think we all know, they think that like one GameCube game is worth like 4 Nintendo Entertainment System games.
That's true.
So I wasn't surprised that they put out that. Maybe look at how many Game Boy Advance games they launched with. They were like 8 or 9. So this didn't surprise me. What did surprise me is that we're leading off with Virtual Boy Wario Land.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we would get Mario Clash. Now, I suppose
same.
there is an argument that they didn't want to put a Mario game right around the time that they had the movie coming out, or I don't know. They also have Mario Sunshine, so maybe they didn't want to get. Either way, I think. And they have the Mario Tennis game.
Mario Tennis is coming out, but that'll be coming out later as well. Right, that's not day one.
Sure, but I thought they would go with Mario Tennis instead, and
because I think that was a launch game when the system came out. I think it was one of the
it was a pack-in.
Yeah, it was pack-in. Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was the one I had.
Right.
Like I had Mario Tennis for it.
Yeah. So either way, I'm really excited for this. I think it's hilarious that in the year of our Lord 2026, the Virtual Boy is sold out right now.
It's funny.
It finally happened. Gunpei Yokoi's vision is finally fully realized. But I think with that out of the way, that's going to do it for our news here. And we are going to move on to our main topic, which is talking even more at length about Nintendo Classics and Nintendo Switch Online right after this break. And we are back with Michael Domangue and Cyril from Defunct Games to talk all about Nintendo Switch Online in the year 2026. Is it worth finally being a subscriber to Nintendo Switch Online? I would argue it has been for a while, but there are lots of pros and cons to emulating old games on Nintendo Classics, and we're going to be talking about all of those on this episode today. I think before we get too much into that, though, I do want to talk a little bit, Cyril, about what you do with Defunct Games, because I think you've kind of become a great resource for a lot of people. Would you mind explaining some of what you do over at Defunct Games?
No, Defunct Games, for those who don't know, I started the website back in 2001. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year in April.
That's great.
Started doing the YouTube version of the channel, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. We're not celebrating that anniversary, but basically it started out back in 2001 as a way to celebrate the systems that didn't get a lot of support. Not, like the Neo Geo Pocket Color or the Atari Jaguar or the Virtual Boy, as we talked about earlier in this podcast. Over the years, as I did more freelance stuff, that morphed into just all retro stuff, and then eventually also modern stuff, because I wanted to review modern games. These days, we mainly look, besides, it's sort of I'm juggling a couple of different things. It's a balancing act. We have modern reviews, and then we have mostly modern indie reviews. But then we also do a lot of stuff looking back at the history of games journalism, mostly. Like we said earlier, whenever retro games come out on modern consoles, we tend to look back at what the magazines said or the critics said back in the day, Electronic Monthly and Video Games and Edge and all those from the UK and the US, mainly English speaking, also Australia. Let's not forget Australia. Any place that has English reviews, because I read English. And
that's fair.
Sorry, other parts of the world.
Just learn all the languages, Cyril. Please.
I know. It's tough when you're this old. Yeah, I like looking at a lot of the history to see what, especially those old magazines, to see kind of how things have changed, how culture has changed, and how opinions have changed on a lot of these classic games and systems.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's so fun, if not just purely for nostalgia, to go back and watch a lot of these review crew videos that you put out. I know you also, in addition to the Nintendo Classics review crew series, you also have the PlayStation Plus review crew whenever they add classic games to that service as well. You always go back to old issues of EGM and Game Pro and Game Fan, all these old magazines, a lot of which I didn't even know existed at the time, which is another fun part. So I think nostalgically, it's fun to go back and listen to like, oh, this is what Shu thought in this episode of EGM or whatever, because I used to be subscribed to that magazine for a very long time. So that's really great to see. But then also there's just so much coming out all the time to these subscription services, and kind of knowing what's worth your time, I think is always valuable, as there are a million games.
But also compilations. I know that that Disney Afternoon compilations are going to be coming to the Switch too here in a couple of months, adding a couple of games, Goof Troop and something else, and so anytime those sorts of compilations come out, we have a lot of fun going back and looking at what the magazine said back in the day. And especially, like, that's a great example because, like, for me, DuckTales was one of the best 8-bit games of all time.
Yeah.
Maybe it was because I was a kid. I mean, I was young when it came out, but
the newest Donkey Kong Country game ripped off movement from that game.
Sure. But I loved DuckTales. And but if you go back and you look at the reviews, you think, okay, all these people are in their 20s, maybe in their 30s in the case of Ed Semrad. And I don't know, they didn't quite get the appeal of either the cartoon or the game, and you see this across the board, and that's sort of the fun of going back and looking at these reviews. Like, Nintendo hasn't put the original Pokemon game on Nintendo Switch Online, but if they did, or if I did an episode about that, you'd see that a lot of the critics didn't get it. They didn't like the cartoon, they didn't like the game.
That's so funny.
And whereas, a decade later, all of them loved the game and couldn't wait for the next installment. Right.
Yeah, and even gave them a pass when they were subpar experiences just because of the amount of like love that the series had garnered up to that point. It's like looking back on that stuff with hindsight is always very fascinating and just entertaining in its own right.
There are a lot of games that people think or deem as classics that Earthbound couldn't have gotten a bad review. Of course, the critics didn't like it. And there are reasons for that. I mean, they didn't like RPGs at the time, for the most part. It also looked dated. It's one of those games, and there are a lot of these games, that if they had come out a decade or 2 decades later, they'd be considered instant classics. But at the time, it was an uphill battle that even some of the earliest Nintendo Entertainment System games that people loved, the Donkey Kongs and stuff like that, a lot of the critics didn't like. So it's fun going back and looking at some of the reasons why, especially. Totally.
Yeah, it's a really great service you provide. And like I said, entertaining videos as well on top of that. I do want to ask, this is not necessarily related to your videos that you do specifically, but I feel like you probably more than anyone else is more plugged into the release cadence of what Nintendo has been doing with Nintendo Switch Online and Nintendo Classics. Have you been able to suss out any kind of pattern to when they like put out games? Because I swear, I've been doing this podcast for 7 years now, and I have not been able to figure out what their roadmap is. It's like Sony, for what it's worth, they have like every month they put out new stuff. With Nintendo, it seems to be so random, right?
It is. It is and it isn't.
Yeah.
There are some things that they're predictable. They will often put out an announcement on a Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time.
Good to know.
So more times than not, now this is not all the time, but 70% of the time, that's when the announcement's going to be. It'll be Thursday night, and that's they also tend to do an expansion pack game and then a vanilla NSO game.
Right.
And then expansion, though there are definitely times where they do a bunch of expansion pack games in a row. And the last half of 2025 was almost all expansion pack games. it was real lopsided, and that's one of the things that we'll get into when you asked if the Nintendo Switch Online is worth getting. Are you asking about the vanilla Nintendo Switch Online, or are you talking about Nintendo Switch Online with the expansion pack? And if you're talking about the expansion pack, are you talking about with the Switch 2 or with the Switch 1? Because your answers are going to vary depending on which system and which package you have.
For definitely with Switch 2, with the GameCube and everything they have available, and really just even Game Boy Advance. If you can get, a bunch of friends to go in on a family plan like I have, you're still getting a pretty good deal. But that's a little beside the point. We're jumping a little bit ahead there. I do want to ask a little bit of a question now, because we talked at the top about how you're working on a book, and I do know that the Kickstarter for that is live right now. Can you explain a little bit about what that book is and what people can expect from it?
Yeah. Do either of you two like cheating? Big cheaters? That's a loaded question.
It depends on what kind of cheating we're talking about.
No.
Were you ever fans of cheat codes? Can you rattle off the Konami code if I asked you to?
Yeah, Dodo, do you have it memorized?
I don't have it memorized, but I did have multiple Game Genies and Game Sharks over my years. Yes.
Yeah, I was a Game Shark kid. I used the Game Shark on Pokemon Blue with aplomb.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm working with the Game Shark himself, Todd Hayes. He is the co-founder of Interact Accessories, also the co-founder of STD Accessories. We're not going to talk about that. He did put out a condom ad for Game Shark, also unrelated.
I think I remember hearing about that.
I have that. I'll send you a picture of that.
Yeah, please do.
He has developed a book called The Complete Cheat Code Compendium, and it is going to be a comprehensive look back at not just cheat codes, but also cheat devices. We're going to be talking to all of the people that were there on the inside, no matter if it was Game Genie or Pro Action Replay or the Game Shark, in the case of Todd Hayes. And I don't know if you've ever listened to Todd Hayes. He is just so much fun to talk to. He is an absolute hoot. And he has a ton of stories, goes a mile a minute, and it is just a wealth of information. And I can't wait to talk about the stories that he's told and sort of the history of Game Shark and all of the magazines and the first party fights and all this stuff. That it drama and drama and drama. It's great, and we're gonna look at all of that. Plus, we're looking at the history and pop culture relevance of cheat codes like the Konami code or the Blood code, or how Grand Theft Auto is keeping cheat codes alive, because there are going to be cheat codes in Grand Theft Auto 6. They're basically the only game that still has them.
Yeah, unless they replace them with microtransactions.
Well, Capcom did.
Yeah. 100%. No, I love projects like this. And it's looking at the book itself, just the way it's laid out really reminds me. And you could see where your expertise on just reading a lot of these old magazines, the way that everything's like laid out and formatted. Like, I love the look of this. It really reminds me of those code and cheat compilations that you would find in like Walgreens or Walmart back in the day, that would just have 100 different games in them. And you wouldn't, use all of them, but it was enough for you to pick up off the shelf and just kind of get interested in. So I'm very excited to read this book whenever it finally comes out. We'll have a link to the Kickstarter for that below in the description of this episode for sure.
Yeah, we're going to be talking to all of the people that worked on, or some of the people that worked on, SWAT Pro and Game Pro and Cheats and Tips and Cheat magazines and all the different ones that came out. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're putting the book together right now. And like I said, you can pre-order right now. Our goal was modest. $10,000. We are well over that right now.
Yeah, I saw that.
We're up into like 75,000 or something like that. I am so happy with the outpouring, and we haven't even announced the contributors that are going to be. We have so much to announce. We have on the Defunct Games website, we're going to have a whole section that is just an archive of the advertising, and some of the Game Shark advertising from back in the day is wild. Like, it was the late 90s, early 2000s, and they were going for some. It's some fun stuff you couldn't get away with these days.
Yeah.
And we're going to have Todd talk about a lot of that stuff and look at the history. And yeah, it's so much fun talking to him.
I recently picked up, when I was in LA, I was at a bookstore. I forget the name of the bookstore, but I picked up an art book that was all like, it was like the evolution of like video game ads specifically from comic books. So it was like every page was like, it was basically from like the early days of like arcade and NES all the way up to like the GameCube. I think one of the latest ones in there was like Super Monkey Ball. But it was just fascinating, because they're all formatted for that kind of thinner comic book page. I found that fascinating. But I'd love some sort of compilation of all the raunchy like 2000s ads from like games magazines back in the day, because it was like they really were on something back then. Everybody was kind of chasing that dragon.
Have you seen the Bloody Roar advert, the first Bloody Roar advert that it didn't air in the US? It was it was only in print magazines in Europe.
I'm not sure that I have.
Like it has the tiniest pictures. I mean, you would not be able to see them even with glasses on. You would not be able to see how small these pictures are.
Right.
And the full page is just a woman in a bra and panties.
Yeah, I mean that
just in a seductive pose. It has nothing to do with the game.
Very flagrant.
It's just
I learned so much about my body by reading video games magazines back in the 90s. But here we are today. Anyway, we don't have to talk anymore about that. But that's fascinating. Definitely check out.
Yes, pre-order the book.
Pre-order the book. Check out the Kickstarter. Check out the YouTube page. But let's move on to, I think, some of what we wanted to talk about here in our main topic. And I think for a while now, there hasn't been a great reason to actually emulate games on your Switch. Like, let's get real. I think up until pretty recently, I think the way that you could emulate games on any number of devices, especially games that can't be bought anymore, that are not for sale, if you want to buy them, you got to buy them on the secondhand market. A lot of these GameCube games, will go for upwards of $100, $200, $300. For a long time, I think emulating on PC or on distinct handhelds was kind of the way to go. But I really think over the course of Nintendo Switch Online being a thing over the past 8 years or so, they've really added quite a bit of bang for your buck with this service. And I definitely wanted to talk about some of the things that you can do on NSO that you can't do with traditional emulation. And maybe we can start with some of those, because I find this to be a pretty fascinating topic. I think kind of at the top of my list of things that, reasons that you want to emulate on Nintendo Switch Online as opposed to using traditional emulation is being able to play online with your friends. I think that is a huge feature that not enough people talk about when it comes to Nintendo classics. And it's something that I'm using all the time, but I think people forget is a part of the NSO emulation scene with Nintendo classics. Dodo, I don't know if we've ever played any Nintendo classics online. Have we before?
We have not. I'm always down for GoldenEye facility slappers only. So you just let me know.
Yes. But I mean,
no.
is this a feature that you've ever used? Is this something
it's not, and it's just from lack of friends. If I'm going to be brutally honest,
that's the gamer's conundrum, isn't it?
But like
middle-aged gamer's conundrum.
But net play and emulators, it does functionally exist, but you're talking about the ease of use of having your friends list and being able to pull that up and connect with people that way. It's not something that can be easily accomplished with the fractured nature of emulation as it currently stands. So
exactly. Yeah. And I think, and it's even for someone like me, and I'm no Luddite, I own several emulation handhelds, from Ambernix to the Ein Thor and all these other devices and whatnot. It's hard for me to figure out how to play those emulators online with friends. And not only do you need to have the same games and the same kinds of ROMs, you need to make sure you're playing it on the same stuff. You have to make sure the devices are compatible and have online capability and whatever. Obviously, I know Dolphin has had, rollback netcode, and lots of people use that for Super Smash Brothers online. When it comes to Smash Melee and whatnot, there's an entire scene around that. But I just don't think that you certainly can't rely on normies to ever figure that sort of stuff out. And then even the people that are a little bit more into the technical side of emulation, I think that's a little bit difficult. So I find the online component and the multiplayer component actually pretty great. What do you think about this, Cyril? Do you have any opinions on the kind of multiplayer aspects and online with NSO?
I think I agree with you. Look, I came into if your wording is that it's easy to play with friends online, I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one real good thing about the Nintendo Switch Online is that it does make it easy. However, as you point out, emulators have been doing online play for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's nothing new. Was it kind of tricky? Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't certainly as easy as Nintendo makes it, but it's never going to be because it's a closed system.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. No, I like the fact much like Michael, I've never used it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a shame, but also maybe for the best, because sometimes I will say when you're playing online, there is no rollback included in this whatsoever, right? When you are playing online, you are completely at the whims of whatever the two internets are, right? The speeds that you have available to you. Like sometimes I play with friends and it's a completely flawless experience. Sometimes I play with friends and if you have the sound turned on at all, it is a nightmare. It's like glitching and slowing down and you're dropping frames and the game is pausing. It's entirely dependent on what the Wi-Fi is of like each participant in that, obviously. But I think if you've got people that are, not on the other side of the world from you and have decent internet, I found that the multiplayer online with Nintendo Switch Online and Nintendo Classics has actually been quite nice and is a very good feature that I think people are sleeping on a little bit. Another one, similarly, that you can find in some emulators, but is not as common in a lot of the emulators that I use, particularly with a lot of these emulation handhelds, is rewinding. Obviously, save states has been a thing for quite a while, but I find with the rewind feature that you have on Nintendo Switch Online, especially when you're playing games like, we had earlier on the YouTube version here, we had the new Fire Emblem and whatnot. Being able to rewind in games like that, especially when you're just kind of trying to have a little bit of fun and you don't really want to bash your head against some of the intense difficulty of a lot of these retro games, I find I almost never use save states just because the rewind feature is kind of what I would need it for anyway. I'm sure, like I said, there are a lot of emulators that do have this feature, but you don't see it quite as much. And I think this is one of the big main things that Nintendo likes to show off when they're showing off Nintendo classics.
I think you see this a lot in compilations. Now, maybe in traditional like computer emulator, I don't know. But I mean, all of the Konami retro games had it. Maybe not the Metal Gear one, but all the Castlevanias and stuff like that, Contras and whatnot. The stuff from Digital Eclipse has it. Most of the, I'm with you that more rewinding is best, not just for classic games, but for modern games too.
Yeah,
I love
right?
it in Forza Horizon. So,
yeah, Mario Kart World just added rewinding as well, which is kind of crazy. I don't think a lot of people remember about that. But what about you, Dodo?
I mean, rewinding is great, and rewinding on a technical level, you're basically just doing constant save states. That's really what it is. It's just like a constant stream of save states. So it's technically very intensive, but it's something that you can do with these classic games. As much as y'all love rewinding, for me in classic games, I need fast forwarding more than rewinding.
That's true.
I need fast forward. And that is actually something you find in a lot of emulators now is that fast forward feature. When you've played this classic game a million times, those first couple of hours, especially if you're talking about an RPG, you want to be fast forwarding through those cutscenes, getting to the good stuff quicker. So that is a feature I'd like to see added.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really great point. That's something that I actually didn't have on our show notes for what you could do with traditional emulation that you can't on NSO. But that's something I would really love to see Nintendo add to their service as well. And I think it is good if Nintendo just take stuff that fans have made with open source emulators, like they don't need to be ashamed about that. We'll talk about a few other features here in a second that we would like to see come to NSO as well. Another thing that I think that NSO brings to the table that a lot of these other more traditional emulators do not are the actual physical controllers that they put out, and also adding on to that, Virtual Boy. Right? Like the upcoming Virtual Boy headset, that's something that is only going to work with a Switch 1 and a Switch 2, right? I mean, maybe you could try to figure out how to put in a tablet or something like that if you have the right size something in that. But there's never been a more authentic way to emulate some of these games than when you're, using the official N64 controller, or when you actually have the Virtual Boy headset doing the 3D. I think the authenticity that Nintendo brings with Nintendo Classics is something that I really appreciate. And that's kind of just hard to do. I think people ask a lot, like, when is DS and 3DS going to come to Nintendo Switch Online? And I just kind of feel like they wouldn't do it. I don't think they want to do side-by-side screens.
Definitely going to do it.
Yeah,
definitely going to do it.
I think they're going to do it, but I think they're going to have some sort of add-on, right? It's
not 3DS, but DS for sure. It's definitely coming.
I just think that what I'm trying to say is, like, something gets lost in translation when you have these screens side by side, or say you have a smaller screen in the corner, like the Mega Man Z and ZX collection or whatever that they did.
Well, they don't have to, like, the nice thing about emulation is that it gives you options, and you can stack it, or you can have it side by side. You could do it a bunch of different ways.
Right.
And whichever is best for that specific game. There's too much money on the table for them not to eventually want to port those games eventually.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I just think what I'm saying is that I think, like, we'll have to see some sort of, like, hardware add-on before Nintendo does it. I think that
we'll see.
They've been very, especially with Virtual Boy, like, they're kind of dancing around whether or not you're going to be able to just, like, play these games in handheld right now.
Right.
They basically have said, like, the Virtual Boy headset is required. And it's like, is it? Though, like, is it required for the authentic experience, or is it actually required? Like, so I think that some sort of, like, flip grip scenario where you can put the Switch on its side and attach the controllers to the side, I think that would be a great way to do it. I've always thought that would be a great way to do DS and 3DS. But, a lot of people have been saying, maybe like a attachable screen that uses that top USB-C port or something like that might be the way that they want to do DS. I feel like that would be a little top heavy and not feel very comfortable to play. Switch 2 is already, pretty heavy device, but
that also wouldn't work for the television.
Right.
And I think that no matter what they're going to do, they got to make it work for both.
Yeah.
But I would be remiss as somebody who freelances at Retrobit Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that when you say the official controller support, you're just talking about Nintendo controllers.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the case of the Sega Genesis or the Saturn, Retrobit Publishing puts out Sega's official, officially endorsed controllers for both of those systems. So if you're playing the emulations of the Genesis or the Saturn on a computer or anything else, you use those and they feel exactly like the original hardware. And those are both USB.
That's interesting. Yeah, I actually didn't realize that. But that makes sense. I think I have some of those original Genesis controllers as well. I didn't realize. But yeah, no, I do like the official controllers, and I like that they're obviously using the same kind of molds and stock that they had back in their factories back in the day. Like, they are about as official as they could possibly be while being, Bluetooth and USB-C and whatnot.
And man, I tell you, I have the Switch N64 controller, and I use it actually more on the emulation side. I use it on my Mister, on my CRT for that great CRT experience. But what's I tried for so long before that came out to find a Nintendo 64 clone controller that would feel comfortable and had that analog stick response. And it's such a specific feel.
It really is.
No third party has even gotten close to. They try to modernize it, to try to make it more form factor. But man, when you want the OG experience, Nintendo really brought that back with that Switch controller.
Yeah. I think it was Andre from Game Explain recently put out a video of, it was like once or something for the Virtual Boy. And he brought up something that I really hope they do, which is having Virtual Boy be N64 controller compatible. Because the way that there were like 2 D-pads on the Virtual Boy, that's going to be hard to emulate with sticks. I don't think it's going to feel as good, but using the C buttons as like the right D-pad and then holding the left side of the N64 controller, that would actually emulate the Virtual Boy controller pretty well, I think. So I hope that ends up becoming a real thing, because as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, I really want that now. But Nintendo has gotten pretty good about like remapping controls, especially in the Switch 2 era. They've been doing a lot of updates with per game control remaps, which is really nice. But
how many Virtual Boy games supported the 2 D-pads though? At the same time.
Well, I know Tolero Boxer, which is
I like the way you say
game. Yeah. What? Tolero Boxer?
Yeah.
What do you say?
I've never heard of that.
Tellero Boxer.
Yeah, Tellero Boxer.
I don't know. Yeah.
Boxer.
I never had a Virtual Boy, so I'm going with what I know at this point. But anyway, so I really do like those controllers, and I think they do a really good job. And I think that's it's a shame that you have to be an NSO subscriber in order to purchase them from their website. That's certainly a cheeky thing that they do there. And then I think the last thing that we have here on the list that is just a plus of emulating games on NSO is there's no setup involved whatsoever. It is just, you've just got the games. If you've got the subscription, you've got the games, and it's got a really nice svelte front end that you can organize them and move them around however you want, but it's the games are there. It's no frills. There's no setup. I'm a huge fan. Like I said, for me, I've never felt right emulating DS or 3DS games because I really need that screen setup. So I bought the Ein Thor in order to have a specifically dual screen device for all my dual screen games, Wii U included, right? It was that important to me to be able to have that be authentic, right? And so, but even then, the setup for that is a nightmare. You got to download all the emulators. You got to make sure they're all set up specifically for all whatever hardware you're using at the time. You got to make sure you can get your ROMs wherever you're going to get your ROMs. If you're doing backups or other ways that we would not ever recommend you do on this podcast. But it's being able to just have access to hundreds of games at this point on the Nintendo Classic service and then not have to do any setup. I mean, when you're talking about barriers to entry for people playing classic games, I think Nintendo has done a pretty good job of knocking down a lot of those barriers to entry. And I'd say that's definitely, the best thing about Nintendo Classics at this point. But what do you guys think about that?
I mean, I know specifically when it comes to Nintendo 64 emulation, there is still multiple steps and multiple compatibility issues that can come into play with that. So I have spent way more time tweaking my emulator setups than actually playing games on emulators over the years. If you were to put the hours, it's wildly uneven. So absolutely, the ability to go through a list, hit A, and the game starts, and it is the way Nintendo wants you to play that game. However, for good or for bad, it's their setup. It removes a lot of the pressure points there for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a tinkerer's hobby. Emulation, I would say, but what about you, Cyril? Do you agree with that? Do you find yourself gravitating towards NSO for its simplicity?
No, I agree with you. But no, I mean, I think that for most people, it is the best way of doing that. Especially if you're looking specifically for Nintendo systems.
Mm-hmm. Obviously,
I mean, if you're looking for other systems, then you're really going to have not much luck.
Right. Some of this probably also would apply to PlayStation. I just don't really use that service, so I can't really speak to it. And this is a Nintendo podcast after all, so we're going to be focusing.
Though I will say that the nice thing about the PlayStation games, unlike the Nintendo Switch Online, is that you don't have to be a PlayStation Plus subscriber.
Mm-hmm.
You get those for free if you are. I mean, a certain tier of PlayStation Plus subscriber, but those PSP and PlayStation 1 and most of the PlayStation 2 games you can just buy for the PlayStation 5.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I do wish that we had a virtual console alongside the Nintendo Switch Online subscription. I think being able to just buy them without the subscription would be nice. Obviously, Nintendo's trying to funnel everybody into their subscription service. They don't really have much that they offer outside of emulation. I mean, there are some things. There's Nintendo Music and a couple other things as well. This is not a full NSO features episode. But, I think the ability to buy those games and just have them and not have to worry about something getting pulled because of licensing or something like that with the subscription service would be nice. But I think the simplicity is hard to argue with. Let's do the flip side. Let's talk a little bit about what you can do with traditional emulation that you can't do with the Nintendo Classics app, the Nintendo Classics apps on Nintendo Switch Online. And there's obviously a whole lot that you can do when you're getting into the nitty-gritty on, open source apps or, these emulators that have had years and years and years of development and whatnot. We can't hit all of them, but I did write a couple here. And if you guys have any you want to throw in as well, I'd love to hear them. But I think one of the big main ones for me is ROM hacks and translations. I find the majority of games that I play on my handheld emulators are things that I can't play on Nintendo Switch Online, right? Like, for instance, they dropped the legendary Starfy games on Game Boy Advance for the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack. And those are awesome games. And this is the first time they've ever been released in the West. But they're all in Japanese, and if there's actually quite a bit of dialogue in those games, given that they're 2D platformers, I find, you'd think that it'd be pretty easy to play, but there's so much story, dialogue, instructions, tutorials that are all in Japanese. But then you go online and you find fan-made, fan translations of these games that are incredibly easy to play great on other consoles, stuff like that. I would love to see Nintendo take more of from the community. It's like they own these games anyway. Reach out to some of these fan translation creators, right? See if you can get some of these on the service. I think that opens a can of worms, obviously. I think, Dodo, you're rolling your eyes a little bit, but what do you think about like fan translations and ROM hacks?
Well, I think we could boil this all down to one game, and I bet you're going to know what that game is. It's Mother 3.
Yeah, sure.
It's Mother 3. And it's Mother 3, and it's literally, it's allowed this game to flourish its fandom even beyond an already very strong fandom even before the fan translation was released, but explicitly says in the terms of the fan translation, we will gladly give this to Nintendo if they ask for it.
Yeah.
Like they have said since day one, if you want to use this, go ahead, free of charge. So yeah, I mean, there's a few translations I've played over the years. I'm a sucker for the Final Fantasies. So I've definitely played Final Fantasy IV with a more English translation that has been done. But yeah, release Mother 3 is all I'm trying to say.
I mean, there's a reason why Starfy was not translated. And it's have you gotten to the endings yet?
I have not.
Those endings are real dark.
Really?
And may have actually increased the ESRB rating.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just saying.
All right.
There's some real dark stuff at the end of those games.
Well, I haven't beaten the fan translation yet. I'll have to do that. But what about like ROM hacks? Are you a fan of ROM hacks, Cyril? Is that something that you find yourself playing with?
Not really. What I like is when an incomplete game will get finished by fans or by the community.
Mm-hmm.
So like early or late last year, the long lost Splatterhouse role playing game was put online and kind of finished. And as you point out, there's a English version of it now. And I like when that sort of stuff happens.
Sure.
But I don't really delve into, the various versions of Super Mario Brothers or the things where, people have just changed it for changing its sake.
Totally. I mean, I really enjoy that kind of stuff. I think like, level mods and expansions and people making new, levels and for Mario 3 or whatever. I find that stuff to be really fun. Something that I've been getting into recently has been like HD texture packs and whatnot. Like on that Ein Thor device, I played through Ocarina of Time 3D with a 4K texture pack applied and like a right stick camera mod, which was not obviously available when that game came out for the original 3DS. It didn't even have the right nub. The new 3DS wasn't out at that point. So it's like stuff like that I think is really cool. And I think, I'm going to play that version on 3DS, which, I bought that game back in the day, but I'm going to play it in 1080p on this OLED screen as opposed to playing the N64 version, upscaled or no, on Nintendo Switch Online, right? I know not everybody wants that. I think a lot of people want the authentic original experience, which is great. And sometimes I want that as well when I'm looking for like a nostalgia trip. But I do think that, little upgrades that fans can do to games is definitely a big plus of emulating on other devices or on PC or something like that. Something else that I think is pretty good, obviously, is you're not tied to one specific device when you're emulating traditionally. Kind of speaking on that, I think a lot of times I want a little tiny screen that I can throw in my pocket and pull out when I'm on a bus or on a train, rather than lugging, my big Switch 2 everywhere if I want to play something, right? I don't know. Have you gotten into the kind of handheld emulation scene, Dodo, at all?
Yeah, I own an Ambernick. I think they perfected the design when they went back to the GBA SP. Mm-hmm. When you have the clamshell that opens, it's a nice tiny form factor. They added triggers, 4 triggers, whatever you want to call it, but it allowed for PlayStation 1 emulation to happen on those devices without sacrificing buttons. Yeah, those are perfect little back pocket. If I'm on the train, that kind of device is perfect for those classic games. So totally. Yeah, I think now with the RAM apocalypse that is happening, I think you're going to see a slowing down of some of those devices. But man, last couple of years, you could find $50, $60 some really powerful emulation devices that go all the way into, say, Dreamcast levels of emulation.
Yeah, I mean, shit. I mean, the Thor that I have plays all the way up to like PS3 and Switch and Steam games, and so it's a more expensive device. It's not a $60 device, but it is a pocketable device. Like on my trip coming up, I'm flying Frontier, right? You have to pay for a carry-on bag, right? But I can bring my backpack, so I'm not bringing my Switch, right? I got all the space that I can fill up in my backpack is going to be taken up with clothes, right? So I'm looking to bring just my one little pocketable device with me on that trip, right? So I think having something like that is actually pretty nice. And then for the real diehards that want 120 frames per second, black frame insertion, the highest quality shaders that they could possibly do and whatever, I think playing stuff on PC and streaming in that way is a lot better than using, the kind of one shader that is included, one CRT shader that's included with a lot of the NSO stuff. Even though, to Nintendo's credit, they have quite improved that CRT shader, and I think it actually looks pretty good now. But what about you, Cyril? Are you a retro handheld enthusiast?
Well, as somebody who works at home and doesn't do a lot of traveling, and when I'm traveling, I'm driving. Right. No, I don't really use a lot of handheld stuff. I love handhelds. I have a lot of, I collected all the old school handhelds, but for whatever reason, about the closest I've gotten to portable emulation recently is, like I said, I was down at the beach for 3 weeks and I bought a laptop so that I could write a book. And I used that to play some retro games. But outside of that, I haven't bought any of the portable systems to do that. Most of that stuff I'll just do at home on the TV. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of that, you could use a TV, you could use a little micro PC. There you can mod the Nintendo Classics or the NES Classic and the SNES Classic to add stuff to that. Those were really awesome devices that I actually wish Nintendo would bring back. I think kind of the closest they're getting here is making these controllers and whatnot. But I think there's a lot of variability that you can have in the emulation scene when it comes to playing on the TV as well. And I think the Steam machine, when that comes out, is going to be an emulation beast that I think is going to open up emulation for a lot of people as well, if that thing does well. If it's not $1,000, but that's beside the point. Another thing here that I think you can do with more traditional emulation that has been really, I would say, fostered over the year is retro achievements. Like adding achievements to retro games. And this is something that PlayStation has actually done with a lot of their recent re-releases. Is that right, Cyril?
Some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them.
So not all.
There are a few companies that won't do that, but some of them do.
Yeah, but they'll add like trophy support or whatever to a lot of the PS1 games. Pretty much, not every game, but tons and tons and tons of these games that you can emulate, you can link up a retro achievements profile to. And I think it's really fun, and it really adds a lot of depth when you're replaying a game to all of a sudden have achievements to hunt. It's just something else you can do when you've already, when you're playing a game from your past. What about you, Dodo? Are you a fan of achievements? Do you like the retro achievement system?
I actually, the only system I have where it's set up is I have a little arcade cabinet that I modded during lockdown, and that has retro achievement set up for it. And I remember like forgetting that I had set it up, and I started playing Sonic the Hedgehog, and an achievement popped up. I was like, what the hell? But yes, I think it's really, I mean, look, honestly, there are games that I buy on specific platforms because of their achievement or trophy support. And it is a knock sometimes when I'm deciding between the Switch version or, say, the PlayStation 5 version of a game. It's like, I try to keep all of my Like a Dragon games on the same platform so I can track all the trophies there together. So having that ability for emulated games, yeah, I could see that being such a fun way to really like, if this is the second, the third, the fourth playthrough or something, to really add sort of a novelty factor to it.
Yeah. What about you, Cyril? Are you an achievements head? And do you think Nintendo will ever add achievements to any of their consoles?
If Nintendo has not done it by now, they're never going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there was a time when achievements were real big, but that time was Xbox 360.
Yeah, I suppose you're
right. I feel like ever since that, look, I was big into achievements early on, but then I realized that I was playing some games that I didn't like a lot longer than I wanted to.
It like became a job. Yeah.
And these days, I don't even pay attention. In fact, because when I'm reviewing games on, especially on like PlayStation or something, I'm recording the video. I have the achievement, or I have the trophies turned off.
Right.
So I don't even notice when they pop up.
Yeah.
And that has prevented me from but do I think that Nintendo should add them? Probably. I can see how people could have fun with, adding achievements to Super Mario Brothers or Ninja Gaiden or something. Sure, absolutely.
It's great stuff. Stomp
I have
on
nothing against
10
that.
Goombas. Come on. Give me a little pop-up. Okay, break my immersion.
I feel like the closest Nintendo did to that was that the NES Replay, those games, and then
NES Remix,
World Championship
Remix.
Yeah.
And then they also did the Nintendo World Champion disc, which is not what I actually wanted, which was the one that I played at the Nintendo World Championships 1990 when I went to it in Seattle.
Oh, hell yeah.
But, with Tetris and Rad Racer.
We got to have you on to talk about that on another episode sometime.
That's my first game event that I ever went to.
That's great stuff.
I still have the booklet for it.
Oh, man, that's so cool. Yeah, no, I've always been so fascinated with that. But yeah, I really feel, I thought that the time for Nintendo to add achievements was with Switch 2. It was like, what are they going to do that can like differentiate the Switch 1 from the Switch 2? And I think in the end, they decided not much, just game chat. Just more power to them.
A talking flower.
A talking flower that looks like Birdo. I think the last thing we'll talk about here, and this one's a little bit more broad, but I think you just have so much customizability with emulators. You can choose the front end you want to use. We've talked at length about the upcoming ISU emulator, which I think looks really, really nice for a lot of these handhelds. But picking how you want to have these things presented to you, what kind of shaders you want to use, what kind of customizability, anything like that. Play it at high res, at the original resolution, at half speed, fast forwarding, like you had brought up earlier. I think all that stuff is kind of a little walled gardened with the Nintendo Switch Online, Nintendo Classics apps. And so I think just overall, if you're into tinkering and you like fucking around with stuff and you like getting everything exactly how you want it to be for whatever device you're playing these things on, you can't beat that with traditional emulation, right? It's just how deep you want to go is really up to you, I think. And so, I think I'd love to see different shaders and, customizable front ends and whatnot come to Nintendo Switch Online. But I think, just in the how long it takes for them to just slowly roll out games over time, I just think I can't see that happening, if I'm honest.
I will say, like, with the way emulation in my relatively long life has really had sort of like three phases of like, can we get these games to work on a computer? Can we get them as close to the hardware as possible? And now we're in this sort of beautiful phase of, can we get these games to be better than what they were on the console? And how do you define better? But you're seeing a lot of recompilations and decompilations of video games happening right now.
That's a whole nother conversation. Yeah.
But it's amazing seeing that, like, we're taking something like you're saying Ocarina of Time, and now we can have it in so many different ways, so many different forms, and still feel like you're having that classic experience. It's powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, that was some of these here. Did you guys have any that you wanted to add to this list?
Do.
Yeah, please.
I have a big one, which is, and I mentioned it before, that if you're just a subscriber to the Nintendo Switch Online and the expansion pack, then you're really only limited to you're really only getting Nintendo systems. Mm-hmm. You get the Genesis, a smattering of titles for the Genesis, but I mean, there are plenty of other systems and even old virtual console systems that I wish were included here. Not just, I mean, sure, you could argue that that we are getting Neo Geo games through another company, so it's not part of the Nintendo Switch Online, but they are on Switch. You have to pay for them, but still. But I mean, I want other Sega systems. I mean, is it too much to ask for the Master System, the Saturn? And I know the Saturn's hard to emulate, or the Neo Geo Pocket Color, or the TurboGrafx 16, or
I had those on my freaking Wii.
Yeah, I mean, just the Virtual Console even had old computer stuff and stuff like that. So I don't know. It just feels like, especially now that it's they've rebranded to Nintendo Classics, which kind of pushes Sega out, and we haven't had a Genesis update in just about a year.
Yeah.
And it just feels like this is more and more so becoming just a Nintendo only thing. And
which you can't, I mean, you can't blame them for that. Like, it's just,
they had a good thing going with the other. And
yeah,
it's not like, that's the reason why it kind of sucks that the Nintendo Switch Online is only on Nintendo systems. That sort of thing. We need sort of a Netflix for all systems that have all of these games and all these systems, and the also rans, the TurboGrafx and the Neo Geo Pocket Colors and the things like that aren't going to get ported anywhere else. We need sort of that stuff. And I don't know. It just, it feels like a missed opportunity not having that and just limiting it. But also at the same time, they have these two tiers and they're doing a monthly subscription. So there's only so much money to go around. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel the Nintendo Switch Online is kind of a mess. And I am of the mind that we probably shouldn't even have two subscription services.
I'm sure they'll be doing away with it at some point.
They need to get rid of the vanilla one.
Yeah. I mean, it's
agreed.
I think it's kind of past the point where it's, it's like there's been so many games added to it that the however much it is per year, which is really not that much, it's kind of crazy what you're getting for it. You know what I mean? At this point. And that's just the very base, like low model, which is very, very cheap. And so, yeah, I agree. I can see them raising the price of the subscription service just generally this year, to be honest. But I think, maybe we can wrap this up with just kind of like a bit of a conversation about emulation in general. I think that's a great thing about emulation, is that it kind of covers all the ground that isn't covered by the official stuff. Like, I don't ever feel any moral qualms emulating old games, part of which is because I subscribe to this service. Like, I am happy that Nintendo puts these games out. Do I wish that every single game that I want to play is available? Of course I do. But they're not, so I emulate on my own the ones that aren't available, and I feel no moral qualms with that whatsoever. You know what I mean? And I think if I want to play a game that's on there in a better way, then I can. all the holes can be easily filled on the back end, right? By the fan community, by preservationists and whatnot. And I think it's very, very important, for the future of gaming. And like you said, we want a Netflix of games. Well, it's all out there on the internet for you, if you look for it.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about a fan project that's happening right now called the Sega Channel Revival. If you want to talk about the Netflix of games, they did it in the early 90s with the Sega Channel, a broadband service where games will be delivered to your house. And fans are now recreating this, where you could play it on your emulator, you can play it on the Mister platform. It's an absolutely amazing historical look back at this early form of digital distribution of games. And the fact that it's coming to emulation, it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And it shows what the fan community can do when you don't have to necessarily deal with some of the legal and licensing and even in some cases technical hurdles that official platforms have to go through.
Sure.
The official stance at Defunct Games is that emulation is good across the board. Most of the time, the companies that own these games from back in the day aren't selling them. And in a lot of cases, those companies don't even exist anymore. And it's just an IP holder that bought it and don't even know what they have. I know this is something we deal with at Retrobit Publishing, because they put out reproductions of games that either never came out in the United States or were limited and just need a re-release. And a lot of the times we're scrambling just to find out who owns the IP. Mm-hmm. And, the only other way, if they're not going to put it out through emulation or through, the Nintendo Switch or anything like that, or even in a compilation, the only way to buy it is on eBay. And it's not like the original company's getting a piece of that. Mm-hmm. So, and those tend to be $300 or $400. So no, I am all for, if you can play a great old game, I don't even care if it's free, just play it. And and what it's done is it's forced a lot of these companies to put out compilations.
I agree.
And we've seen a lot of great compilations. Mm-hmm. And, some of my favorite things that have come out recently haven't necessarily been on the Nintendo Switch Online, like what Digital Eclipse is doing with their Legend series or whatever it's called with Karateka 1 and they,
Yes, I love those where it's kind of like it's more a playable documentary than it is like a compilation of games. It's great stuff.
Right. Or even like Atari 50, which was just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And that's a really great point. It's kind of like in the same way that, Napster and Spotify kind of like changed the music industry, not always for the better, but I think in a lot of ways it made stuff more accessible. It made things easier. It's like what Gabe Newell has always said, is that like piracy is a service problem, more than anything else. And I do think it's great to have these things available. I always buy retro compilations whenever they're available, just to support that practice, because I think it's really great to see that going forward. But I think this has been a really wonderful conversation. I think there's a whole lot more we could talk about with emulation, but it's such a huge topic that we got to stop it somewhere. So I think we're going to call it for now on the main topic. But if you have any thoughts on this, viewer, we'd love to get your input as well. Please sound off in the comments below on the YouTube video or shout us out over on social media, and we'll be sure to talk about that next episode. But I think with that out of the way, we're going to move on to our last segment, which is the games we've been playing recently. I have been playing some games this past week, but I'm going to go pretty quick here because it's already a pretty long episode. I will say,
been playing, David.
Yeah, not last night, but 2 nights ago, I went over to my friend's house and we played frickin' Beatles Rock Band, man.
Great game.
For like 3 hours. We played through all of Abbey Road from start to finish. He has all the DLC included for this game. My friend Jeremy was on drums. My friend Rob was on lead vocals. And I was playing guitar and doing like backups and harmony vocals. Man, I really, truly think that Beatles Rock Band is one of the best video games ever made. I think it's the best rock band game. And of course, I'm a huge Beatles fan, but I think the love and care that was put into this game, and just the fact that like all of the stems from this game have been available ever since because of that has made for some really interesting remixes that fans have done of these games or of these songs in the past. So that was really cool. I'm glad I was able to do some of that. On my AYN Thor, I've been playing Ocarina of Time HD. I did beat that game. So that's the first time I've actually beaten Ocarina of Time since like 98 so or maybe 99 so that was really great to go back and revisit that game, especially with the texture pack. Also, I started up Kirby Planet Robobot on the Ein Thor, and I mean that was a good looking game when it was on the 3DS running at 240p. You can imagine how good that game looks in 1080p on an OLED screen. It is gorgeous. No texture packs needed on that one. It just runs and looks flawless and feels very modern. I really hope that we see a actual HD re-release of this on the Switch because I think this is a wonderful game, and it's definitely one of the best Kirby games, and probably my favorite Kirby game I've played in a while, other than Forbidden Land, which I really loved. And then lastly, I'll bring up, we were talking here about mods and fan mods and whatnot. I have recently installed CTGP Deluxe. And if you're not familiar with this is basically a ROM hack of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe that adds 16 cups to the game, which is crazy. That's 4 tracks each in each cup. So it's just a whole bunch of fan-made tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It's so much fun to play. They all look gorgeous. I mean, some of them are, different levels of quality and whatnot. Some of them are recreating some of the tracks that weren't in the Booster Course Pass. And some of them are brand new creations. Like there's a Green Hill Zone level, which was really cool. You see some crossover from some other franchises and whatnot. But this has been a ton of fun to play. I'm going to be putting more time into this in the future. It was a bit of a hassle to get it up and running, but this is another one of those games where I own Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I own the DLC. I have no moral qualms, getting all this set up on my little handheld emulator device or on the Steam Deck. But this has been a ton of fun to play, and that's what I've been playing recently. What about you, Dodo? You've been playing anything cool recently?
Yeah, I'll give shout outs to 3 games. First off, I've been playing a lot of Death Stranding 2 recently. Not even playing it on the actual PlayStation 5, but I'm using an app called Chiaki, which is just a remote play app on my Steam Deck. Wild and crazy game, but really enjoying it. Enjoyed the first one, so I'm really enjoying the second one. I got it back into Animal Crossing with the new 3.0 patch. Mm-hmm. So my island, which this is not my first island, this is my second island that I started in 2024. We won't talk about what happened to the first island. It was very sad. But going back to this island, it's been 2 years since I've been on it, but really enjoying the update. Haven't gotten to any of the new functionality yet. Still trying to pay off the house at this point, but just happy to be back on the island.
Did you buy the Switch 2 version for that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Gotta get
nice. That was only
$5.
It's not too bad.
Exactly. Yeah. That was an impulse for me. But piggybacking off your Beatles Rock Band, my game of the year last year, and I'm still playing it now, was not a game released last year. It's called Rock Band 3 Deluxe. And it is a mod for Rock Band 3 you can get on the PlayStation 3. Pretty much every PlayStation 3 now is homebrew enabled with very little work. And Rock Band 3 Deluxe lets you add custom songs that you can find online into Rock Band 3. You can add the entire library of DLC to it. So I've got a 4,000 song Rock Band library on my PlayStation 3, put in a new hard drive and everything. But it's the whole Rock Band experience, including Rock Band 4 songs ported back into Rock Band 3. So you get the whole Rock Band library. And now that new instruments are coming out, you've got 2 different companies coming out with guitars. Drums are coming out next year or this year. So Rock Band's back, baby. I'm just
the kids yearn for Rock Band, dude. I can't believe 2 of us have been playing Rock Band. Yeah, probably. That's a big,
absolutely 100%.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah.
God bless Harmonix, dude. I love that company. What about you, Cyril? You been playing anything cool recently?
Well, let me ask you guys. All right. Are you ready for some football?
All
right. So look, I am not a big sports guy, but my Seattle Seahawks are going to the Super Bowl. So it's a little hard being here in Western Washington not to not get caught up in the hype.
Mhm.
And I have been playing a game for review. I started it late last year, took a month-long vacation, and picked it up after the review or after the vacation. And I've been playing, wait for it, Mutant Football League 2.
Ayo.
Yes.
And it is horrible. It is just one of the worst games of last year.
Oh my God. I thought that's not where I thought this was going, Cyril.
No.
Swerve.
It's real bad. It's real bad. And I got into a DM thing with one of the developers because I accurately pointed out a problem with it. And they're like, yeah, all right, that is what's supposed to happen. And it's unforgivable. Like
they said it was
terrible.
a feature, not a bug.
Yeah. No. Okay. Every single game I played, just about, had this thing where I would get a touchdown, but then there would be some dumb, like, jokey flag that came up that was like, oh, your players were too woke. So you get a 25-yard penalty.
Oh my God.
And so I didn't get that touchdown. And then I'd get the touchdown again, literally the next play. Nope, it's another flag. Now I'm 35 yards back with another dumb joke.
Right.
And then,
oh my God.
And then I again get a touchdown the very next play. And again, it's a thing where it takes me back 50 yards because of some stupid flag that is just a joke. And then they're like, oh, okay, clearly the referees are being paid off, so we have to kill them. Right. Well, I get a penalty for killing them too. So now I have lost 3 touchdowns. I am now back to 0 points, and I'm backed up like 50 or 60 yards from the goal. And this happened 4 or 5 times in a row.
Wow.
And it is garbage programming. So instead of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to recommend, because it's really the only game I've been playing.
Sure.
I need to get a review up for it. And that was not the review just there.
Well, yeah, you got to save that for your channel. You got to get clicks. You know? Yeah.
So I'm gonna call out. I'm gonna shout out a couple of games that didn't get a lot of attention last year. One of them is called River Towns, and if you like SimCity and Tetris and wish that those 2 games were combined,
you have my attention.
You're gonna love River Towns.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's really great. And the other game is called While Waiting, and it's a little puzzle game based around a guy's life from basically from he was born to when he dies, and all of the times it's maybe 50 or 60 scenarios where he's just waiting around, waiting for his child to be born, or waiting for sushi, or waiting, for something, for a movie, just standing in line. And all the puzzles are based around those scenarios. And it's really, really cool and creative. It's surprisingly emotional. Dang. It's a great game.
I'll have to check that out. I love it when games like really take big swings and try new things that has never been done before. That's what indie games are great for, right? That's where the true innovation is happening. I'll definitely have to check that one out. But I think with all that, gang, that's going to do it for this episode. Wow. That was a great one. Thank you guys so much, Michael and Cyril, for coming on the show. It was such a delight to have both of you on. I'll be sure to reach out again sooner rather than later, Dodo, to have you on, and we'll definitely have you back on again, Cyril, sometime if you're interested in joining.
I'll see you in episode 680.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much to MilkyWay.co for doing our website. Thanks to Corduroy for doing our music. Thanks to all of our patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to find me online, I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Dodo? Where can people find you online?
You find me at Domangue on Instagram and Blue Sky.
Very good. And what about you, Cyril? Where can people find you and your book and your YouTube page?
They should go to defunctgames.com. I'm just Defunct Games on YouTube and defunctgames.com on Blue Sky. I'm not really on many of the other social media because it's overwhelming.
Yeah, I like Blue Sky. Blue Sky has taught me that it's okay to get a handful of likes every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I dig it. And I just shot you a follow over there on Blue Sky too, so I definitely will. And like we said before, we will have links both to the Defunct Games YouTube page and the Kickstarter for the book in the description of this episode. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Blue Sky and Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We have a website, switchheadz.com. And then we also have a Discord, a Facebook group, and a Patreon. If you'd like to throw in a couple bucks on the Patreon, nobody's going to stop you. Love for you to join the Discord. It's such a wonderful community we have over there. Always popping off. There's always great discussion. If you'd like to join a community of non-toxic gamers, that's the place to go. But that's going to do it. We've got a great episode for you guys next week, so don't touch that dial. Other than that, you know the drill. Be safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Back this Kickstarter, man. Everybody wants an old book filled with Game Shark codes. We all could use that in our life these days. And while you're at it, bring back the Game Shark. I think the Game Shark would fix a lot of what's going on in the world right now. Anyway, fuck ice, free Palestine. We love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.